Just a couple of days ago, there was a new Canon rumor that stated the following. 2 new EOS M camera bodies coming in the second half of 2020. A Canon EOS M50 Mark II would make sense, but the second EOS M camera remains a bit of a mystery. That person is also told that Canon will be announcing more prime lenses for the EOS M mount in the second half of 2020 as well. So let's talk about why that rumor could be absolutely great news for the YouTube community. First of all, of course, these are only rumors at the moment, and it better not be some kind of weird predecessor to the EOS M200 or the M5. Also, the more prime lenses announcement for late 2020 is great. It just shows overall that the EOS M system gets more attention from Canon in the future. To this date, I think the Canon M50 is still the best 1080p YouTuber's camera you can get, and we're filming on it right now. I think the M50 loses a lot of comparisons because of its crippled 4K, but let's be honest, this is not a 4K camera. Forget about the 4K. It's a 1080 camera, and for that, it's a good one. A big part of the YouTubers out there and a lot of big names to this date still record in 1080p, and I wish overall there would be more comparisons of 1080p video quality between different cameras. But nowadays everybody seems to be focused on 4K or even 8K. Samsung, anybody? But let's face it, 1080p in my opinion is still more important than a good 4K. And here's why. If you shoot in 1080p, there are less video recording restrictions than there is in 4K. A lot of times when you bump up to 4K from 1080p with mirrorless cameras, you get some restrictions in shooting video. For example, the camera has to crop into the sensor, meaning it will zoom in a bit, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a limitation of the processing power of the camera, and that can be a disadvantage. Other things are, maybe you get worse autofocus, you will get a shorter recording limit, the camera might overheat, and all that stuff might be disadvantages to shooting in 4K. Also, you get way bigger file sizes in 4K, and that means you will run into a storage problem sooner than later. And the biggest disadvantage for still shooting in 1080p video is the quicker workflow. From transferring your files to the computer, to editing, to rendering, to uploading it, all of that is way quicker when you use 1080p footage. And all of this becomes so important when you try to do 1 or more videos a week and you're on a deadline at all times. Believe me, you just want to keep your workflow as quick as possible. But hey, if you just edit 1 vacation video a year and you just want the best quality, you might as well just go for a good 4K camera. So in that regard, I think the M50 is still the best all-rounder YouTuber camera. I know there's an EOS R out there and it looks slightly better. However, that thing is super heavy. And have you seen what the lenses for the full frame costs? There's also some new competitors from Fujifilm, and the Sony's has always been better in video quality, but the all-round usability factor of the Canon is better in my opinion. It's kind of the jack of all trades and the master of none. So let's say it's gonna be true, and at the end of 2020, Canon is gonna bless us, or hopefully bless us, with a Canon M50 Mark II. Here's what I wish that camera will bring to the table. First of all, image quality. I really hope they will improve on the image quality of the M50. The M50 uses the 24.1 megapixel sensor that I think Canon is using since the 70D. So that thing is becoming quite outdated right now. What we will most likely to see is the 32.5 megapixel sensor that they used in the Canon M6 Mark II. And what that would mean is it will probably bring the same image quality than the M6 Mark II, which means we will most likely get 4K 30 frames per second without the current limitations of that crappy 1.7 crop. It will most likely be no crop, and we will keep the dual pixel autofocus. I also hope it will have slightly better low light capabilities. Maybe we'll see a new processor till then, but I doubt that will do a lot at all. I'm happy if they use the sensor as it is in the M6 Mark II. It will be an upgrade since we get usable 4K 30. I know I talked about 1080p a lot, but if the 1080p gets slightly better and we get the usable 4K 30 on top, that would be enough for me, enough to ask, and I'll be happy with that. Second point, I hope they will improve on the image stabilization. I think that is one weak point of the Canon M50 and most Canon cameras actually. The Canon M50 does not have IBIS, it only had an electronical image stabilization. It helps a little bit, but it is really not good. So that is one of the weak points of the M50 right now. And yes, there were rumors for Canon to this year bring out cameras with actual in-body image stabilization. And if that would be going into the new Canon M50, that would be absolute amazing, but I really do not count on that. What I hope though is that they might improve the electronical image stabilization a little bit. And I'm no expert in that regard, but we see in GoPros, we see in smartphones how good software-sided electronical image stabilization can be. And I really hope that they improve on that one a little bit to just make it a little bit more usable in run and gun shooting, especially handheld and the typical vlogging style for YouTube. However, if Canon, after all these years of crippling their cameras, would come out with an in-body image stabilization, maybe combined with an electronical one, that would be absolute amazing, and you would all of a sudden probably have the best vlogging camera out there. And I think that would almost be enough, because if I talk about audio here, yes, Canon cameras are known to have not the best preamps for audio, and audio is super important, but I think it's usable. And I don't even want to hope for something like 120 frames in 1080p without losing the autofocus, or 4K 60 frames. It's not gonna happen, let's be honest. If we look at how Canon behaved over the last few years, the one thing I've learned is keeping my hopes low. So 4K 60, 1080p 120, forget about it. I don't need it, I don't want it. Please just go with the image quality and maybe a little bit of stabilization. So I would like to hear from you what you want in that camera. Are you excited for a new Canon M50? I think the most likely thing is, as I said before, the sensor from the M6, and hopefully a little bit of more stabilization. If we get those two things, that would be a worthy upgrade, and I would be happy with that and buy it. I just really hope it's not going to be a new crappy M5 with another flip down screen. I mean, they could put all the specs in that camera, but that flip down screen would just be the deal breaker. And I do not know why they would produce something like that. I was disappointed seeing the M6 Mark II again with a flip up screen, but that thing is at least still usable, while as the M5, I would just, like, I know Canon, I know they would do that. Hey, let's make a new M5, let's put amazing specs in there, and then bam, flip that thing down still. But in the end, I was happy to see these rumors. I think the Canon M50, I didn't even realize it's 2 years old already, and I really think there has not been a new camera that has been better overall, all around in 1080p. And with these rumors and the new lenses for the M system, there is hope that maybe the EOS M system will get better in the near future, because I'm constantly debating of jumping the ship and going over to another brand. But I really like a couple of things about Canon, and this gives me hope that it will get better in the near future. But let's not hope for too much, because like we know Canon, let's hope they're just not gonna pull another Canon.